This is my husband's favorite book series, and for the month of August, I want to read it and give my true reaction of it. I cannot remember my husband ever reading a book for fun throughout our 7 years together, and the fact that he went out and bought a whole book series to read just shows me how much he really loves this series, so I definitely want to give it a try. It is the Life as We Knew It series. So first I'm going to be reading Life as We Knew It, This World We Live In, The Shade of the Moon, and Dead and Gone. I don't actually know if that's the order of the series, so that's something I need to go and check, and I know nothing about this series, so we're also just going to check out the Goodreads page before getting too far into anything. I have my handy dandy laptop, so let's see what we can find. So on Goodreads, it looks like this is the Last Survivors series, and Life as We Knew It is book 1. I feel like I knew that pretty confidently going in. And then the order of the books is The Dead and the Gone, This World We Live In, and The Shade of the Moon. I think The Shade of the Moon was the thinnest one when I held it, so that kind of makes sense. And it even looks like we have two kind of sets where it's numbers 1 through 3 in the series, and then books 1 through 4. So I'm curious how long we went between books 3 and books 4. In terms of rating, I think these are all rated very highly. So we have a 3.88 for the first book, a 3.85 for the second book, and a 3.8 for the third. And then for the series edition, as what the little peek of a description I can see says, is the last book, The Shade of the Moon, is a 3.29. So that'll be really interesting to see. The only description I'm going to read is the first book from Goodreads, just because I want to see what it's about, but I don't want to spoil anything for myself. So let's read the description together. Miranda's disbelief turns to fear in a split second when a meteor knocks the moon closer to the Earth. How should her family prepare for the future when worldwide tsunamis wipe out the coast, earthquakes rock the continents, and volcanic ash blocks out the sun? As summer turns to Arctic winter, Miranda, her 2 brothers, and their mother retreat to the unexpected safe haven of their sunroom, where they subsit on stockpiled food and limited water in the warmth of a wood-burning stove. Told in journal entries, this is the heart-pounding story of Miranda's struggle to hold on to the most important resource of all, hope, in an increasingly desperate and unfamiliar world. I'm kind of surprised that it's a female main character. I think I was just judging that my husband's favorite series would have like a male main character driving it. I guess I shouldn't judge because my favorite series is the Pendragon series, which has a main male character. So we're kind of flip-flopped in that way, which I think is pretty cool. So I'm officially going to begin Life as We Knew It today. It doesn't look too long. I should have just looked at Goodreads. Why am I doing this to myself? Okay, well that's the last chapter. I'm really trying not to look at the words. Okay, so this is 337 pages, but it's pretty small. The text looks like it's okay. I'm curious to see how I'll read this without my glasses because I lost them. So we're gonna start this today, and the goal is to finish all 4 books in my husband's birthday month. And we're starting a little late because it's already August 8th, but it's his official birthday today, so I feel like that's a fun day to start. So let's see Life as We Knew It. All right, I have to switch up what I'm doing, but I read just a very little bit of Life as We Knew for this first clip, and I'm genuinely shocked it's my husband's favorite book because it just doesn't seem to have like that super gripping beginning. It's told through these journals for Miranda, and while I know what's coming next with the asteroid, and that's one of the reasons I think I'm still invested, I don't know, I'm just kind of surprised. It was a slower start than I was expecting so far in the first like 12 or so pages, but as soon as I get some other stuff done, I'm hopefully going to keep reading, and I'm very excited to see when that asteroid hits what exactly happens, because I know something's gonna go down. Obviously that's what the whole book is about, but I'm really curious to see just how everything kind of starts to play out. Okay, so I started this book, it feels like a week and a half ago, and I haven't been able to really pick it up again. I got an unexpected arc out of nowhere. I don't have any more of those coming up, and I finally have time, since it's the weekend, try to read some more of this book. And it's August 19th, so cutting it close to see how much I can actually read of this series during my husband's birthday month. But I'm really hopeful because he said that he flew through these, and I feel like once the meteor hits the moon, then I'll start flying through these. We'll see. All right, I'm on page 216 of Life as We Knew It, so just still on the first book, haven't finished it yet, but I can definitely tell it's an older book. There are definitely some subtle hints to George W. Bush having been president at this time. So president from 2000 to 2008. This was clearly, written a little while ago. And just some of the terms that the main character says too are just, you can tell it's dated. I don't think it's bad. I definitely think it's more just, I guess, character driven. Like there's not really a plot. You don't really know where anything
everything's gonna go. It's written in the style of diary entries, which I think is interesting. I'm really curious how we get 2 more books plus another book that came out a little bit later from this. Very interested to see where that is going to go. I feel like I definitely have more thoughts, and I think the way that I want to like format this video is being able to do like a roundup after I actually finish each book and then talk about more of my thoughts. So we'll see how fast I read each of the books, and we're gonna see how that applies, but I will keep you posted on how much I hopefully read tomorrow.
Okay, I just finished Life as We Knew It, and I have the second book. I want to talk about Life as We Knew It first. There are going to be spoilers, like, moving forward through this video. I think the first part, it was fine, not spoilery at all, especially talking about, like, the meteor hitting the moon. I mean, that's on the back of the book. If we need to revisit that, it says, when a meteor hits the moon and knocks it closer to orbit, to the Earth, nothing will ever be the same. Worldwide tidal waves, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and that's just the beginning. That's what we were getting into with this book, but now I feel like to talk about this book, there's going to be spoilers, especially because it's a series, but we're gonna get to that. Following Miranda, she's supposed to be 16, and I felt like for a good portion of the book, it was a little immature in terms of the writing style for being under 16 and for how good her grades were in high school, because they talk about their grades near the beginning of the book before the world completely starts to fall apart. And I really liked the dynamics of the family in this. I mean, I like the overall messaging of staying together. I have been watching the show Alone on Hulu with my husband and learning more about survival, and I feel like this was pretty realistic in terms of if you were in the situation Miranda and her family were in, then yeah, I feel like you could probably survive. They talk a lot about rationing their food, what they do for water, so I think it's very, very interesting. It is written in first person through diary entries. However, the book just ends, okay? Like, there's no resolution, I feel like, good or bad. And I thought, oh, okay, like, this is the first part of the journals for Miranda, right? That's what I thought. And I thought the rest of the series was following the same character. This was in 2006. You can tell it's very 2000, early 2000s-ish with the mentions of who the president is, not by name, and just by some of the language that they use with each other. But it felt so real, and I got so immersed into this specific world with this specific cast of characters. I didn't necessarily cry, but I was definitely nervous at some points. My heart was pumping. I feel like it got very, very good, especially, I would say the point in the book that it turned for me was probably like page 60, around there, and then I was like hooked for the rest of the book. I'm not surprised that my husband really liked this book growing up. I am just surprised in general that he would like the first person diary entry, because I feel like that does get some people a little while to get into. And I mean, I read the first, 12 pages of this, and I didn't really pick it up until a week and a half later, but now I really want to keep going, kind of. Here's my problem. So again, we're following Miranda, first person diary entries. This is the second book, The Dead and the Gone. It came out 2 years later. We're following a different person. My biggest gripe with books is when I feel like stuff is not all tied up neatly at the end. And that's just like a personal choice, right? So I was like, okay, Life as We Knew It ended the way that it ended, and we're gonna get more diary entries from Miranda. We're not getting more diary entries from Miranda in this book. We're following freaking Alex. Who is Alex? You're telling me I have to go through the apocalypse again? I have to read about it again? I have to go through like those scary situations and heart-pounding moments again? I'm tired. My heart is tired. I don't want to get invested in new characters just to be sad all over again. I feel like if I waited 2 years between these books, I would be so much more mad that Miranda is not the main character. I waited like 2 minutes between grabbing book 1 and book 2. Oh, so it's so upsetting. The back of this book says, when an apocalyptic disaster strikes New York City, Alex Morales suddenly finds himself fighting to stay alive. They talked so much in the first book about the coasts for, I think, a few pages. Like, they extensively talked about the coast and the situations that had happened there. You knew it was pretty bad on either side of the coast. Being inland was, just better to be away from the oceans. It wasn't necessarily better from the volcanoes or the earthquakes or feeling those effects. Why are we going to be here? How is this going to look? I guess maybe getting a different perspective, but like, I am so focused on Miranda. And maybe that was good that the books were released 2 years apart, because then maybe people weren't as attached and ready for a different perspective. I'm not ready for a new perspective. I want to figure out what happens with Miranda. I want resolution. And I'm scared I'm not going to get that, because now we have to read about Alex. Who the heck is the third book about? Who's the fourth book about? Does it change? Do we get to stay with Alex? I don't. Oh man. Like it. It's just so frustrating from like what I personally wanted as a reader versus what the author did. So I'm really interested to see how this goes, especially because this starts May 18 and book 1, that's where chapter 2 starts. So we're following similar timelines, but obviously we're now more of a city landscape, whereas Life as We Knew It was kind of more rural, I would say. But what are we even going to do here? What is this going to add to my stress levels? And also, when first opening the book to chapter 1, it's in third person. You're telling me I'm not getting more first person diary entries? First you're going to change the character on me, now we're going to change how it's written? Oh, it makes me so frustrated. I still want to read it and know what happens, but I feel like the ending of Life as We Knew It is haunting me now, because I feel like it's not resolved. That's like my biggest gripe with books. So I'm not going to rate any of the books until I read the whole series, because I feel like I'm going to need to read the whole series. I hope book 4, I'm just going to say this now, I really hope, like, if book 3 also changes main characters, I hope book 4 brings all the main characters together somehow. Maybe that's what Suzanne is masterminding, okay? Maybe that's what she's doing. Or maybe the 2 characters from book 2 come together in book 3 or something. But I feel like Miranda's story cannot end the way it ended. And if we're going to switch characters, like, I'm probably going to get reinvested in Alex's story, and then Alex's story isn't going to end where I want it to end either. Oh man. I'm definitely going to have to talk to my husband about this, because he says he remembers nothing, but he just remembered loving these books. And I'm going to be like, I feel like this is going to stick with me for a little while. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I'd remember it 10 years later, but I feel like I do remember some stuff from my favorite series 10 years later. So I'm definitely going to have to figure it out. So on to The Dead and the Gone with Alex Morales. Okay, we're not an ideal filming setup because I am traveling for work and I forgot my tripod. So we're just 10 out of 10 right now. I think it is recording and I think I'm at a fine height. I don't know why I didn't bring my tripod. I just should have known better. I just wanted to give like 100-page initial thoughts because I had such a visceral reaction to learning we weren't following Miranda's story anymore. 100 pages into The Dead and the Gone, second book, we're following Alex and I'm so silly. Is it in third person because he doesn't live and Miranda's was in first person because she does? Because that's gonna break my heart. Because I feel like I am starting to really feel for Alex in this book now. We are in New York. The timeline is definitely different in the first 100 pages too. And he has like sisters he's taking care of, but he's like shipping one off to a convent. There's a lot more religion, I feel like, in this aspect in terms of I feel like we're actually following someone who's active in a church now. So that's really interesting to see how that plays out in this world. And then if Alex dies, what the heck is the third book? What's the fourth book? So those are like my initial thoughts. But yeah, I feel like I'm just gonna start flying through the rest of the series just because I'm so curious. If I have to fall in love with another character and they die, I'm gonna be really sad. If I have to do that in book 3, I'm gonna be really sad. And book 4, I'll also be really sad. So maybe one of them will have a good ending. Probably not, because the world is ending in the books. I was filming something else down here, so I figured I would just talk about The Dead and the Gone because I finished it last night at 10 p.m. and then I immediately ran downstairs to grab the next book, The World We Live In. So I read the end of this book like right next to my husband the entire time because there is a death that is described in this book where like a tree branch impales said person, and like it's a character that you've like come to know about, and this is a kid's book. What do you mean? We're already facing so many terrible things. That death just shocked me so much, and I like reread it to my husband and I was like, you don't remember this? Are you joking? Like, how did your mother let you read this? I will say there is a lot more like Catholicism in this book than the other books, and it was interesting to see that juxtaposed with like the brutal deaths and the body shopping where the main characters would like steal stuff off corpses. So that was an interesting juxtaposition to think about. And I did fall in love with Alex, shocker, just like I fell in love with Miranda. And of course, this is another open-ended book. Great. My favorite types of book. My husband clearly has a very different reading taste than I do because I cannot stand open-ended books. I literally can't. But you know what's nice is that the third book, this book right here, The World We Live In, did you know the author dedicated it to me? Y'all, the author dedicated it to me because the dedication literally says, for anyone who ever wondered what happened next. That's to me. I'm convinced this is to me. And we go back to Miranda's story. So we follow the same girl we followed in book 1 in Life as We Knew It. But I forgot last night at 10 p.m. as I was running to get down here which book came next. So I looked at the back of this book and then the other book, I'm looking at it, The Shade of the Moon. The Shade of the Moon follows somebody different. So I was excited because I was like, okay, we're going to get some resolution for Miranda in this book. Then we're going to get some resolution for Alex in the 4th book. No, we follow somebody named John. Who's John? Did I forget who John was? Was he mentioned and I just like forgot him and all of the terrible stuff that happens in both of these books? I will say what was interesting about this book is that there's no parental figure in The Dead and the Gone. And in Life as We Knew It, I mean, Miranda's mom was an integral part of why they survived. So it was interesting to see how Alex, who goes from 17 to 18 in this book, really takes care of his younger sister. So definitely thought it was interesting. It was definitely a great perspective to see it in the city, not in more of like a rural area like where Miranda lives. So I do admit this was good. I'm still mad about the open ending. It doesn't really make me happy. I think I liked this better than Life as We Knew It, just if I had to compare those two books. But now that we're getting Miranda's perspective in the 3rd book, it might up my rating of the 1st book. So I don't really know what's going to happen. I really want to try to read this tonight, but I have a lot of stuff going on this weekend, like Blast from the Past, I guess. I am filming my readathon this weekend, and I'm not going to read these books during the readathon, or at least on camera, because I want to focus on some other books. So I might not pick this back up until Monday. And so I'm hoping to get back to this book super soon. But I'm at least hopeful that I'm actually going to finish this series like before mid-September, which I feel like is pretty good for starting close to mid-August for reading the books. I'm going to count that as a win. While I was upset to not follow Miranda's story, I was really happy to read about Alex's, but now I am extremely excited to read about Miranda's. And if I get a lot of stuff done today, I'm definitely going to start Miranda's book tonight before I start my readathon. So I just finished This World We Live In, the 3rd book in the Life as We Knew It installment. And I am very happy to see that this really does combine books 1 and books 2 by having both Alex and Miranda in this book. This book gets like weirdly intense on emotions, and I think just like moves a little bit faster than all of the other books in terms of like, I guess the like showing how people's mental states are. Like, I don't know how I would feel in their situation, right? So some of their choices, I was like, man, this is a really quick timeline. Oh, but also like the moon got pushed closer to the earth, so what you gonna do during these times? I was not expecting how many deaths suddenly came at the end of the book, and I could not imagine waiting 3 years for the next one, right? I believe this was published 2010, and our next book, The Shade of the Moon, is 2013. Could not imagine waiting 3 years. I would have definitely assumed that like this was the ending just based off of how cliffhangery all of the other books were. I figured this was maybe just Susan's style. Really happy there's not, because I like being in this universe. But now knowing there's a 4th book, after reading the first 3, I don't know if another book's gonna be enough. I feel like it almost has to reach like the full conclusions for it. I feel like I still can't rate the books just because I've been on such an emotional journey with all of them. And I really feel like it's going to be the final book that I'll be able to rank all of these books, because I don't really know how I feel necessarily about all of them. I liked all of them. They're all getting above a 3-star for sure. I just don't know where above a 3-star they're all getting. Happy to be done with This World We Live In. It was pretty short. Now we're moving on to The Shade of the Moon. We can already tell from the covers, kind of like between book 1 and book 2, we're definitely somewhere different here. So more of a house style. This looks like more of a school, definitely more town-like. I wouldn't have imagined something this town-like to actually exist. Kind of odd. So let's read the back together, because I have no idea where this is going to start. It says, the riveting conclusion to the series begun with the New York Times bestseller Life as We Knew It, in which a meteor knocks the moon off its orbit and the world changes forever. It's been more than 2 years since John Evans. I believe earlier I had glanced this cover and saw John, and I didn't know who John was. In my head, John is always Johnny. I know the author changes it midway during both books 1 and book 3. I believe they start out calling him Johnny, and then it changes to John. I always thought of him as Johnny even when I read it. So I guess we're following the younger brother and his family. I'm assuming that's his dad, his dad's wife, his mom, his step-sibling, Miranda, his sister, and then Alex, the other kid that's like traveling with them, and his family left Pennsylvania, so 2 more years, hoping to find a safe place to live. Yet John remains haunted by the deaths of those he loved. His prowess on a soccer field has guaranteed him a home in a well-protected enclave. So like John really loves baseball. So I'm curious what is this soccer enclave? What the heck is this? I feel like sports were not mentioned really beyond like Johnny loving sports. They're protecting people who can play soccer. That's weird. Why? Okay. But John is painfully aware that a missed goal, a careless word, and even falling in love can put his life and the lives of his mother, his sister Miranda, and her husband Alex in jeopardy. Okay, so Miranda and Alex got married. Okay, that's kind of cute. Kind of excited to see that. But where's his dad and his dad's wife and the baby? His step sibling. Where are they? What happened to them? That makes me a little nervous. I really don't want the baby to die. I really don't want to hear that the baby died or that anything bad even happened to any of them. When everything he values is at stake, can John risk doing what is right in a world gone so terribly wrong? Is soccer like the Hunger Games in these books? Like, why is so much value placed on it that they're gonna like protect people for it? That's weird. Books 1 and books 3 were done in first person diary entries, and books 2 was done third person. So I want to see what like person this is in before like actually starting to read it. Okay, whenever there's part 1s and part 2s in this books, I feel like my heart breaks because like something major is gonna happen. So it looks like we have, John Evans sat upright in his bed. Okay, so we're in third person, no diary entries. This is, I really don't want to spoil it for myself. This is 288 pages long. I don't know if that's going to be enough to answer all of my questions. I really don't. But I don't think there's another book. I don't think another one's going to come out. So this is pretty much what we got. And I believe this was the lowest ranked Goodreads one. I believe all the other 3 had over like a 3.8 rating, and this was the lowest, which makes me nervous. Because I've seen how much people love the Life as We Knew It series in general. I've made a few TikToks about it over the course of August, and people have loved this series in some of the comments. And I'm like, okay, it wasn't just my husband. This was well loved. So what happens in this book where it's not necessarily as well loved? Today is also August 29th, and I would love to finish this before August to actually, finish my husband's book series in his book month. But I'm still really happy about the 3 that I've read. I feel very proud of myself. So 3 books down, 1 to go. One more emotional roller coaster to ride, hopefully in the month of August. What the heck did I just finish? This 4th book was the most unhinged book of all of them. So let's do a brief recap through the 4 books. First, we had Life as We Knew It. This was a 4.5 out of 5 for me. We follow Miranda. It's her first person diary. She was looking forward to so many high school events. An asteroid hits the moon, moves the moon closer to Earth, and then volcanoes start erupting, and there's ash, and she lives with her mom, her brother John, and Matt, and they just try to survive. And I liked the ending of this in terms of like the cliffhanger part, knowing there was the rest of the series. I did like Miranda, R.I.P. Laura's boyfriend. Lots of emotion in this book, and I really felt like I was there. I still feel like this book was really relevant, even though it was written quite a few years ago. I still feel like I could imagine myself being in that scenario, which is why I think I latched onto this book so much. Then we have The Dead and the Gone, and I've been reflecting on this. If I were to go back and read this series again, I think I would have started with Alex's perspectives. I mean, there's no real spoilers between books 1 and 2, and it would have been interesting to read this book first, and then Miranda's first person perspective, and then continue with Miranda's perspective into the 3rd book. I think just for my own continuity, that's how I would have read it. So in this book, we follow Alex, who is the sole caretaker now of his sisters, Julie and Brianna, after the asteroid hits the moon, and we're in New York, and it's very different in the city life. There was a lot more religion in this book, obviously, because of the private school, and it was just more accessible, I feel like, in the big city to have religion. So I feel like that was interesting, and I think one of the reasons I gave it a 4 out of 5, there was just a little more unhinged situations with like Alex's friend and body shopping and how they try to get out of there, and how Brianna, very much just a lot happened in this book, and I just don't think I had the same attachment I did to Miranda's first person perspective. Speaking of Miranda's perspective, we go back to her in book 3 with This World We Live In. This was also a 4 out of 5 because now that I've read all the books, I can rank them. And we see Alex and Miranda's timelines come together. We see Miranda's dad come back. We see Miranda's stepmom, Miranda's half brother, and her perspective written throughout this book. And I feel like after reflecting on book 4, it could have ended here. This was still a 4 out of 5 for me. It just didn't give me the same vibes as the first book. A lot more unhinged decisions by the adults, and I feel like because it was left pretty open-ended, I feel like I wouldn't have ranked it a 5 out of 5, but I feel like after reading book 4, I should have just been satisfied with this ending. I should have just accepted it. Because book 4, I feel like one of the reasons this was a 3.5 out of 5 for me is there is so much new language. It feels so separate from the series because I felt like I was now in a world I didn't fully understand. Whereas with books 1 through 3, I was in a world I could somewhat relate to. With the enclaves in this book, so those are the safe towns that were mentioned in books 2 and 3. John, the little brother of Miranda, he's our narrator in this book. He gets a pass to join this enclave. They call him a slip because he wasn't like initially rich. And then it's all about how he is surviving in the enclave. His after school activity, which all the kids have to have, is soccer. And the soccer is to show the non-enclavers, the grubs, how powerful the enclave is. They overall have a better life here. Like the way John and Lisa interacted, I thought was very interesting because the stepmom and stepson vibes were definitely there. But also I feel like they did survive an apocalyptic situation together. So their relationship was interesting. But then the way that John treats his family, I was like, really? Like these people gave you everything and you just like forgot about that? So he just wasn't the most likable character, and they tried to make him have a redemption arc in the book. I didn't buy it. I just did not buy it at all. I really liked seeing Alex and Miranda and Laura. Y'all, when I read about Laura and the way that she was killed in this book, I had to put the book down. There's always, I feel like, a surprising death in all of the books. And this was the most surprising, and I think the most gruesome. And the riot scenes in this book, again, this felt the most like a fiction book. Whereas, especially Miranda's diary entries in books 1 and 3, and even Alex's, it felt more grounded. It felt more real to me. And that's what I was expecting with this 4th book, but then it just kind of, went off the rails. There's a kidnapping with a baby. That's weird. I feel like with Miranda's baby that gets, sold to the enclavers and then they kidnap it back, I kind of saw it coming in terms of that Miranda's baby was alive. I didn't think they were going to steal Miranda's baby back. I feel like a big question with this whole series is if there was a 5th book, right? Because clearly there is room for a 5th book if the jumps from book 3 to book 4 was possible. Would I read the 5th book? I think absolutely I would. Even though this was even more unhinged, I would be very curious to see how they're doing all together in this new society. So I thought that was interesting. And then I've made a few TikToks about the series as a whole, and it's been really fun to see that this is a nostalgic series for a lot of people. So I'm definitely curious to hear your thoughts if you've read these books before, and I am excited to later this year do a reread of one of my favorite series as a kid. And so it'll be interesting to compare a series that I already am going into loving versus this series that my husband made me kind of fall in love with. Stay tuned, I'm really excited. And if there's any other nostalgic book series that you want me to read, definitely let me know because this was actually a lot of fun.